In a small town, nestled in the rolling hills of Virginia, there were two prominent families, the Grays and the Millers, who shared a complicated past filled with both camaraderie and rivalry. At the heart of this tale is an unsettling account of love, deceit, and a descent into vengeance that has haunted me since I stumbled upon it in the old archives of our town's library. Eleanor Gray, the eldest daughter of the once powerful Gray family, was known for her radiant beauty and sharp wit. The Millers, on the other hand, had a son named Edward, an aspiring lawyer with dreams that stretched beyond the confines of our small town. Their families, hoping to unite their fortunes, had arranged for Eleanor and Edward to marry, a common practice among the town's elite to consolidate their influence. However, fate intervened in the form of Catherine Miller, Edward's cousin, who was visiting from New York. Catherine and Edward instantly fell in love, unaware of the prearranged marriage between Edward and Eleanor. Eleanor, feeling betrayed and sidelined, vowed to do whatever it took to reclaim Edward's affection. With tensions rising, Eleanor turned to a known figure in the town, an old woman rumored to dabble in the dark arts. Desperate, Eleanor sought her help to cast a love spell on Edward. However, instead of bringing Edward back, the spell only drove him deeper into Catherine's arms. Driven by jealousy and bitterness, Eleanor's actions grew more extreme. She began to spread malicious rumors about Catherine, tarnishing her reputation amongst the townsfolk. But when that failed to drive Edward away from Catherine, Eleanor's envy turned deadly. One cold autumn night, Eleanor's obsession led her to hire a hitman to eliminate her rival. Catherine's untimely death shocked the town, and suspicion immediately fell upon Eleanor. Although there was no direct evidence linking her to the crime, the circumstantial evidence was overwhelming. Eleanor, however, wasn't content with just eliminating her romantic rival. In her twisted view of justice, she believed the entire Miller family should pay for what she perceived as their role in her misery. So, during the annual town gala, Eleanor planned to poison the wine, aiming to wipe out the Millers entirely. The plan went terribly wrong. The poison spread not just among the Millers, but throughout the unsuspecting guests, causing a tragedy that would be remembered for generations. Eleanor, once a respected member of society, was now reviled as a murderer. When the truth of her actions came to light, the town was divided. Some saw her as a woman scorned, driven to the edge by a heartless lover and a cruel society. Others saw her for what she truly was, a person whose envy and hatred had led to the death of innocents. In the end, Eleanor was arrested and awaited trial in the town jail. It was there, in her dark, cramped cell, that she concocted a final plea. She claimed that Catherine's ghost haunted her, seeking revenge for her untimely death. Eleanor begged for her remains and those of Catherine's to be cremated together in hopes that this act would appease Catherine's spirit. The townspeople, eager to put the tragic saga behind them, agreed to Eleanor's request. Both were cremated, and their ashes scattered in the forest that bordered the town in an attempt to cleanse the community of the dark cloud that had settled over it. This story serves as a grim reminder of how a single obsession can spiral out of control, leading to consequences that ripple through generations. As I delve deeper into the history of our small town, I uncover more tales that intertwine with Eleanor and Catherine's tragic saga, tales of love, loss, and redemption. But those are stories for another day. Last week, I finally got a week off work, a rare break from the daily grind at a local newspaper in a small town where nothing much happens. Instead of spending it lounging around, I decided to take a trip to visit an old college friend, David, who had settled down in a rural area several hours away. David wasn't your typical success story. After graduation, he decided to return to his roots, a decision driven more by a sense of obligation than desire. The community had pooled resources to send him to college, hoping he'd bring back knowledge and prosperity. Instead of pursuing a lucrative career in the city, he chose to become a school teacher in his hometown. David's village wasn't known for much, just another dot on the map, struggling like many others. But something had changed dramatically over the past 3 years, as I was about to discover. The two of us had kept in touch sporadically, enough for me to accept his invitation with intrigue. David picked me up at the local bus stop, a far cry from the scrawny kid I remembered from our college days. He seemed confident, even prosperous, which was puzzling given the typical earnings of a rural teacher. As we walked through the village, David explained the transformation. It all started with sheep. Not just any sheep, but a special breed that he had somehow managed to cultivate. These weren't your average farm animals. Under David's care, they grew faster, healthier, and were in high demand across the country. It sounded incredible, like something out of a modern-day agricultural fairy tale. But the proof was there for me to see. The village had flourished, trading in their old ways for sheep farming. David's explanation was vague when I pressed for specifics. He mentioned adopting new breeding and feeding techniques, but dodged the details. That night, unable to sleep and driven by a mix of curiosity and unease, I followed David as he sneaked out with a package. What I uncovered was a horror I couldn't have imagined. In a dilapidated barn hidden from the village was what David called their golden goose. A sheep, but not just any sheep. This one was enormous, with an unnaturally large frame and a look in its eyes that sent shivers down my spine. David approached it with a reverence that was almost cult-like, slicing off a piece of its flesh with a ceremonial precision. This, he confessed, was the secret to his success. Feeding this flesh mixed into the regular feed made their sheep grow at an unprecedented rate. I was appalled. The ethical implications alone were staggering. But things took a turn for the worse when, in the middle of our confrontation, we heard screams. The pasture was on fire. The ensuing chaos revealed a more sinister reality. Not only had the secret been about to spill, but the prosperity it brought was fragile, built on a foundation of lies and cruelty. The next morning, as I prepared to leave, The village was a shadow of its former self. The fire had consumed everything, leaving behind only the charred remains of their livelihood. David, now broken and defeated, confessed there would be no more dealings with whatever dark pact he had entered into. The land, ironically fertilized by the ashes of their downfall, would be turned over to crops, back to an honest day's work. As I walked away, a thought haunted me. It wasn't the sheep that were terrifying, but what people could do in their pursuit of prosperity. The real horror lay in the choices made, consequences overlooked for the sake of wealth. And as I boarded the bus back to my world, the weight of the story I carried was heavier than any I had ever written. 3 months ago, I took a trip that turned from mundane to horrifying in the blink of an eye. A trip to visit my friend Ben, who was hospitalized after a car accident. Ben and I go way back to high school, where we first discovered our shared passion for journalism. He was always the more talented retier, setting his sights on a career to uncover and tell the stories that mattered most. Now he was a correspondent for a well-known magazine, known for its diverse range of topics, from the latest fashion trends to pressing societal issues, boasting a wide readership and impressive circulation numbers. Ben's commitment to his work eventually led to his hospitalization. A car accident during one of his investigations had landed him in the hospital. Given his dedication, the magazine's editor-in-chief decided to cover 80% of his medical expenses, allowing Ben the luxury of a private room, something akin to what you'd expect from a star-rated hotel rather than a hospital room. On the day of my visit, I sat chatting with Ben, who was already planning his next big story, despite sporting a cast from his recent mishap. Our conversation was unexpectedly cut short by a blood-curdling scream from across the hall in room 2117. The chaos that ensued was something straight out of a crime drama. Nurses rushed towards the noise, a scream so agonizing that it sent chills down my spine and had me on my feet in an instant. From what I could gather, a shadowy figure clad in a black coat, who I had noticed earlier for his somber demeanor and strange gait, had entered room 2117 not too long before the havoc began. Inside, the scene was gruesome. The room was a mess, furniture overturned, and amidst the chaos, a man lay stabbing another repeatedly, his actions fueled by what seemed like deep-seated rage or insanity. The backstory to this horror began months earlier when Ben reconnected with an old schoolmate, Jack, under rather unfortunate circumstances. Jack had fallen on hard times, a stark contrast to his successful high school days, when he was seen as the most likely to succeed. His situation had changed drastically, embodying the proverbial fall from grace. Their chance meeting revealed the depths of Jack's envy and bitterness towards Ben, who had achieved the success and stability Jack had always desired. The turning point came when Jack, consumed by jealousy and anger, confronted Ben and his wife at the hospital. The altercation turned deadly when Jack, having already caused fatal harm to Ben's wife in a fit of rage, attempted to attack Ben as well. In a desperate struggle for survival, Ben managed to overpower Jack, leading to the latter's death just as law enforcement arrived. The aftermath was heart-wrenching. Ben, now a widower, was left to mourn the loss of his wife in a tragedy that was both senseless and preventable. The incident left a dark cloud over the lives of everyone involved, a stark reminder of how quickly life can spiral out of control when past grievances are allowed to fester into violence. Sharing this story isn't easy, but I believe it's important to highlight the consequences of unchecked anger and the importance of seeking help before it's too late. The names and places have been changed, but the essence of this tragic tale remains a harrowing reflection of reality for too many. Hey folks, just wanted to share a chilling experience I had a while back. It might seem a bit twisted and hard to believe, but I assure you, every word is true. This is my first time sharing something like this, so bear with me. It all started during my junior year of college. I was studying at a state university, not the top of the pack, but decent enough. The pressure to excel and secure a good job post-graduation was immense, especially since most of my peers came from more prestigious institutions. I always considered myself an average student, but my dedication to my studies and a bit of charm seemed to work wonders for my social life within the campus. During that time, I was solely focused on my education and future career, keeping romantic pursuits on the back burner. That changed when I met Emily. She was a fellow junior in my department, strikingly beautiful and just as dedicated to her studies. We first crossed paths during a community service project in a small remote village about 2 hours from our city. It was pure chance that we ended up on the same bus, sitting next to each other because those were the only seats left. I didn't think much of it at first. However, during the project, 2 local kids went missing, leading to a massive search operation. Fate brought our groups together again as we joined the villagers in their search. The kids had wandered off near a known dangerous area where wild dogs roamed. As darkness fell, everyone was on edge, navigating the rough terrain with flashlights and calling out for the missing children. After hours of searching, the kids were found perched up in a tree right beside the dog's den. The villagers, fearless and determined, managed to rescue them despite the obvious danger. I got slightly injured in the process, but a simple scratch couldn't dampen the relief of having found the children safe. Emily and I grew closer from that experience. I admired her courage and empathy throughout the ordeal. Once we returned to university life, our friendship blossomed into something more. We supported each other through the stresses of school, and our relationship became my source of strength. As graduation neared, the harsh reality of the job market hit us. We faced rejection after rejection, our hopes dwindling. Our last chance came with a small company looking for fresh graduates. The interviewing process was weird. They seemed to prefer candidates based on looks rather than qualifications. I felt a shiver down my spine. when the manager, a sleazy-looking fellow, eyed Emily with far too much interest. Nevertheless, we both got the job. A rare stroke of luck. Months went by, and Emily quickly outpaced me, earning a promotion. However, her success came with a price. The manager began demanding more of her time, often for business dinners and the like. I trusted Emily, but couldn't shake the feeling something was off. My fears were confirmed one dreadful night. Emily called me late, her voice slurred, mentioning a crucial dinner meeting that could lead to a Nusa promotion. Hours passed with no word from here. By 2:30 a.m., panic set in. Calls went straight to voicemail. Then, suddenly, a call back. She sounded off, mentioning an urgent out-of-town business trip. Something didn't sit right with Moore. Days turned into a week with no contact. Our anniversary passed with no sign of Emily. Then, late one night, she returned, looking as radiant as ever, but worn and quiet. She spoke of a successful trip, but seemed distant. The next day, I decided to follow her, fearing the worst. Emily led me to a secluded park where, to my horror, a manager visibly drunk stumbled towards us. What followed was a confrontation straight from a nightmare. Emily, driven by a mixture of anger and desperation, attacked the manager. I intervened, fueled by a mix of shock and rage. The fight was brutal, and in the end, the manager lay motionless on the ground. Emily turned to me, tears in her eyes, confessing the truth. She had been assaulted by the manager that night, she told me, her spirit and sense of self shattered by the experience. In her despair, she sought not just justice, but revenge. As emergency services approached, sirens wailing in the distance, Emily made me promise to move on, to live a life full of purpose and kindness, in stark contrast to the darkness we'd just endured. She walked away before the police arrived, leaving me alone with a torrent of emotions and a promise to keep. Looking back, I see now how our lives spiraled into a thriller novel's plot driven by love, betrayal, and a thirst for justice. Emily disappeared after that night, and no one has seen her since. They say she left the country, looking for a fresh start. As for me, I dedicated myself to advocating for victims of violence, honoring Emily's bravery and our short time together. This story isn't just mine. It's a testament to the strength found in the face of adversity and the power of love to inspire change, even when shrouded in darkness. Thanks for letting me share. Hey everyone. I wasn't sure if I should share this, but it's been on my mind and maybe writing it down will help. This is about how my friend, let's call him Kay, and his family went through some really tough times. It's a bit of a heavy story, but here goes. Kay Sikisindul was one of the quieter guys in our group, always had a lot on his mind. Recently we grabbed some coffee and he opened up about his parents. I had only met his dad once when we were freshmen in college. His dad dropped him off at the dorm, and that was the last I saw of him. It wasn't until a year after we graduated that I found out Kay's parents had both passed away. His mom had been bedridden for years, so in many ways her passing wasn't a shock. But Kay's mom, in her younger days, was this vibrant, passionate person who loved gardening more than anything. She came from a well-off family and was quite the catchback in her college days. She even had her own greenhouse where she spent hours. Kay's dad, on the other hand, was this average Joe, but with a kindness and a love for plants that matched her own. As Kay tells it, his dad didn't have much going for him except this genuineness and their shared love for the green world. Despite having many suitors, Kay's mom chose his dad because she saw in him a genuine companion in her passion for gardening. They were both in college, dreaming big but practical dreams about their future. It choose 3 days to see his dad, understanding that he needed to stand out and provide for a future family, ventured into landscaping and city greening before it was a recognized field. He started small, taking on projects here and there, and eventually his efforts caught the attention of their college and local businesses. Despite objections from her family due to his lack of material wealth, Kay's mom chose to be with Kay's dad, and they started a life together. Kay's dad built up a landscaping business from scratch with Kay's mom by his side, still tending to her greenhouse. Everything was relatively fine until Kay was 3. That was the first time Kay's dad didn't come home at night, which became a recurring issue. When Kay was about 10, his dad came home late again to find Kay's mum had fallen ill due to being left alone in the cold. This event left her with long-term health issues, eventually leading to paralysis. Kay's dad, filled with guilt, spent every moment beside her from then on, leaving his business for Kay to handle in his later years. Kay's mother's health deteriorated over time, and she passed away shortly before Kay graduated from college. On her last day, she asked to hear Kay's dad sing, despite him being a terrible singer. After she passed, Kay's dad dedicated his days to staying in her room, talking to her as if she was still there. Kay worried about his father's mental health, but saw no clear signs of dementia or confusion. Half a year later, Kay's dad passed away in his sleep. The night before his passing, he had mentioned wanting to be with Kay's mum again, which left Kay unsettled, but also brought some strange comfort. While going through his father's belongings, Kay found a diary that shed light on his parents' love story and the depth of their connection to each other and their passions. Despite never believing in the supernatural, Kay couldn't help but feel there was more to their story, a bond that seemed to transcend life itself. I shared this story not to bring anyone down, but to share the incredible strength and resilience in facing life's hardest moments. Kay's journey through grief and understanding has been inspiring to me. I hope it can offer something to you as well. Take care, friend. Hey folks, got a real bone chiller to share from my time at uni. Still shakes me up thinking about it. It all started when I got back to my dorm from a trip. My roommate, Mike, greeted me with some sliced fruit on a plate, a nice gesture since he was a bit of an outcast at our Midwestern college. Often bullied, but I always had his back. My family was well off, and I'd often help Mike out with stuff he needed. As I reached for an apple, the darnest thing happened. The knife on the plate just shot up and zoomed straight at me. Couldn't dodge it in time and ended up with a nasty gash on my face, needing about a dozen stitches. It wasn't pretty, and it made me furious, smashing stuff around our room, demanding who was behind it. Mike was just as panicked, swearing he didn't do it, that maybe the room's history had something to do with it. Last year, it was a girls' dorm. Desperate for answers, Mike suggested something outlandish, contacting the spirit world for clues. He mentioned his family back home, practiced some rituals, and thought maybe the dorm's past had stirred something. I just wanted to rest, so I headed to my parents' place, while Mike decided to stay back to try and figure things out. Mike got creative, making a makeshift seance setup with a candle and some drawn symbols. Nothing too spooky, just stuff he thought might work based on old wives' tales from his hometown. Think he even got some chicken blood from the cafeteria for authenticity. Sometime later, he even got a cold call about some cemetery selling plots, which he took as a sign to pursue his idea at the graveyard, linked to some girl who died the previous year, not a student, but rumored to have ties to the school. Armed with nothing but his makeshift tools and a phone for light, he hit the cemetery by night, trying to summon anything that could provide answers. Got spooked real bad when he thought he saw shapes moving in the dark and bailed, just wanting to forget the whole ordeal. Fast forward. I'm back from my parents', and Mike's acting weirder than usual, talking about strange calls and visits, tying back to that girl's grave. Things escalated when he started getting pulled into conversations and situations about selling cemetery plots, literally becoming a walking ad. Felt like the girl's spirit was making him do things against his will. Meanwhile, my face was healing, but the tension between Mike and me was palpable. He thought I blamed him for the accident. Wasn't long before a confrontation sent him back to the cemetery, looking for that salesperson he met the first night, thinking maybe she had answers or was involved somehow. Turned out, she was just as clueless, but revealed that the girl, whose spirit Mike thought he was in contact with, had died under tragic circumstances involving a former student. This student had coerced her, threatened her when she refused him, leading to her death by suicide on campus, a story buried to protect the university's reputation. Mike was trying to piece everything together when out of nowhere, life seemed to return to normal. Well, as normal as it could after such a bizarre series of events. I was getting my stitches out. Life in our dorm resumed, and everything about spirits and hauntings fell silent. However, Mike couldn't shake off the feeling that there was more to the story. The sales lady, the mysterious calls, his unexplained actions, all hinted at a larger unsolved mystery surrounding the girl's death and her connection to the campus. Despite his fear, he knew the only way to find closure might be to confront these spirits directly, though he doubted he would ever muster the courage to do it again. So that's my tale. Crazy, right? Never thought I'd share it, but here we are. Gives me chills just recalling it. a reminder that some things are better left unexplored.